From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! Undocumented and unafraid. Those are the chants of 6 people arrested last night in Chicago protesting President Obama's record on deportation. More than 1 million immigrants deported. We'll speak with an undocumented student who was arrested at the protest last night. She was just released from jail this morning. Has the federal government's Secure Communities program really made us more secure? We'll host a debate between the Harris County Sheriff, Adrian Garcia, in Texas, and in Los Angeles, Chris Newman of the National Day Labor Organizing Network. Then, Vice President Biden goes to China.
As the 2 largest economies in the world, at the moment when the world economic circumstance is uneasy, I think we hold the key together to not only our own prosperity, but to generating growth and jobs worldwide.
We'll look at America's secret spy war with China. Our guest, longtime investigative journalist David Wise, author of the new book, Tiger Trap. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Justice Department's investigating whether the credit rating agency Standard & Poor's improperly rated dozens of mortgage securities leading up to the nation's financial crisis. According to the New York Times, the probe is focusing on occasions where S&P's managers overruled lower-level analysts who wanted to assign lower ratings to mortgage bonds. The investigation was launched before Standard & Poor's decision to downgrade the U.S. credit rating earlier this month. It's unclear if the Justice Department is also investigating the other 2 major ratings agencies, Moody's and Fitch. News of the probe comes as the Securities Exchange Commission is being accused of destroying thousands of documents related to potential violations by the nation's largest banks and hedge funds. On Wednesday, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley said an agency whistleblower has sent him a letter detailing the unlawful destruction of records detailing more than 9,000 information investigations. The documents included cases linked to the financial crisis, such as Goldman Sachs, AIG, and the Bernard Madoff Ponzi scheme. The whistleblower, Darcy Flynn, has worked as a lawyer at the Securities and Exchange Commission for 13 years. In a statement, Senator Grassley said, quote, "It doesn't make sense that an agency responsible for investigations would want to get rid of potential evidence." President Obama's wrapped up a 3-day Midwestern bus tour aimed at appealing to voters amidst a slumping economy. Speaking in Illinois, Obama said he would present a deficit reduction plan that would include unspecified means to raise government revenues.
We're going to have spending cuts, and we're going to have revenue. We'll have more spending cuts than we have revenue, but we're going to have to take a balanced approach, and everything's going to be on the table. It doesn't require radical surgery for us to fix it. It just requires us all taking an approach that says we're a family and all of us are going to share a little bit in the burden. And those of us who are most fortunate, we can do a little bit more.
Obama's expected to lay out a new deficit reduction and stimulus plan in a speech after Labor Day. The White House says Obama will propose new spending on infrastructure projects, tax cuts for companies that hire workers, and even a larger amount of deficit cuts than the $1.5 trillion to be proposed by the new special congressional super committee. A Gallup poll released Wednesday shows just 26% of Americans approve of Obama's handling of the economy. On the Republican side, Texas Governor and presidential hopeful Rick Perry has responded to criticism of some of his fiery comments at the outset of his less-than-week-old presidential campaign. Among a series of controversial statements, Perry suggested Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke is treasonous and would potentially face physical harm were he to visit Perry's home state of Texas. Perry chided President Obama for cautioning him on his rhetoric.
The president said I needed to watch what I say. I just want to respond back, if I may. Mr. President, actions speak louder than words. My actions as governor are helping create jobs in this country. The president's actions are killing jobs in this country. It's time to get America working again.
Later in the day, Governor Perry made another widely publicized statement when he declared global warming to be a hoax. Perry spoke at a news conference in New Hampshire.
The issue of global warming has been politicized. I think there are a substantial number of scientists who have manipulated data so that they will have dollars rolling into their projects. And I think we're seeing it almost weekly or even daily. Scientists who are coming forward and questioning the original idea that man-made global warming is what is causing the climate to change. And I don't think, from my perspective, that I want America to be engaged in spending that much money on still a scientific theory that has not been proven, and from my perspective is more and more being put into question.
Forces loyal to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad have significantly intensified their crackdown on the nation's opposition movement, conducting widespread arrests in Damascus and cities around Syria. Witnesses say at least 10 protesters were killed and dozens were injured in the flashpoint city of Homs. Syrian forces also opened fire in the cities of Aleppo and Hama. State media reported the militaries ended a 4-day assault on the coastal city of Latakia, but residents say government forces continue to open fire in the city's neighborhoods. The UN Human Rights Chief, Navi Pillay, is expected to recommend the UN Security Council refer Syria's crackdown to the International Criminal Court. Libyan rebels are clashing with President Muammar Gaddafi's forces in an attempt to gain control of strategic oil refineries and further isolate the capital city of Tripoli. On Wednesday, the rebels launched an assault on a refinery in the city of Zawiya, forcing hundreds of refugees to flee. A similar effort in the city of Brega has reportedly left 18 rebel fighters dead, 13 others wounded. Residents say electricity has been cut in the Libyan capital of Tripoli, where the Gaddafi regime is struggling to retain control. East of Tripoli, rebels are now claiming to have discovered a mass grave containing 150 civilian bodies. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the Libyan embassy to the United States has been reopened on behalf of the rebels' Transitional National Council. The U.S. closed the embassy and expelled its staffers after the conflict in Libya erupted earlier this year. Ali Ajali, who quit his post as ambassador under Gaddafi in February, presided over the reopening.
For the first time in 42 years, this embassy represented a free Libya. I would like to acknowledge the members of the Libyan American communities, some of whom are here today, for patiently supporting the cause of freedom in Libya. This new embassy, under the control of the Transitional National Council, is committed to serving the Libyan and for advancing their call for freedom and democracy in Libya.
In Iraq, at least 5 people were killed and 22 wounded in separate attacks Wednesday. The violence comes just 2 days after Iraq suffered its deadliest day of the year, with at least 89 people killed in a series of attacks nationwide. In other Iraq news, the U.S. military has only now disclosed it carried 2 airstrikes out on Iraqi territory in June. The Pentagon says the targets were militants who had operated against U.S. troops. The admission comes as the leading Iraqi Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr has issued a warning over the prospect of a longer U.S. occupation of Iraq. In a brief statement, Sadr said there would be, quote, war if U.S. forces remain beyond the year-end withdrawal deadline. The Iraqi government recently began considering a proposal to formally accept an extended occupation. Thousands of people are protesting in India over the jailing of veteran anti-graft activist Anna Hazare. He was detained earlier this week in an effort to prevent an indefinite hunger strike and mass demonstration in a New Delhi city park. Hazare and his supporters are seeking to create an independent anti-corruption agency with sweeping powers to indict government officials. Earlier today, Indian officials announced they've reached a deal to release Hazare on Friday so he may begin his fast. Supporters outside the prison praised his campaign.
But the way he has come up, you feel that there is another Gandhi which is coming in India. I believe he is only 7th or 8th class pass or something. Doesn't make a difference. But he appears to be such an honest person. And the way the country is moving, the way they're supporting, it appears that we got a right man to support him.
These people are swindling lakhs and thousands and lakhs of crores. They are swindling and filling their coffers. So I don't want this.
In breaking news out of the Middle East, at least 5 people have been killed and a number of others have been wounded in simultaneous attacks on vehicles in southern Israel. The exact number of deaths is unknown, nor is it clear if the assaults were related. In the first attack, a passenger bus carrying both civilians and Israeli soldiers was fired on as it traveled to the port city of Eilat. At least 10 passengers were reportedly wounded. The attackers were pursued by helicopters and Israeli forces who reportedly exchanged fire with the gunmen. Moments later, an Israeli military vehicle was struck by a roadside bomb, injuring an unknown number of people. In the third reported attack, an anti-tank missile was fired at a passenger car, critically injuring at least 5 people. The Associated Press has reported a 4th potential attack, but details have not been confirmed. In other news from Israel, the Israeli government has announced it will refuse to apologize to Turkey for the deadly flotilla raid that killed 9 people, including a U.S. citizen, last year. Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said the decision was long overdue.
It's clear that it's a pity we didn't make this decision earlier. The fact that it took so long shows a bit of insecurity. Sending a message of weakness would be the most dangerous thing for Israel today.
The U.S. Justice Department has acknowledged firearms linked to a controversial gun sting targeting Mexican drug cartels have turned up at the scenes of at least 11 violent crimes in the United States. The crimes reportedly took place in several Arizona cities, including Phoenix, where the so-called Operation Fast and Furious program was managed, as well as in El Paso, where some 42 weapons from the operation were seized at 2 crime scenes. Weapons also turned up at the scene of U.S. border agents slaying in southern Arizona last year. Under the once-secret program, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF agents, encouraged U.S. gun shops to sell thousands of guns to middlemen for Mexican drug cartels in an attempt to gain access to senior-level figures within Mexico's criminal organizations. The news comes as the ATF is drawing criticism for a new decision to promote 3 senior officials involved in designing and supervising the program to management positions in the ATF's Washington, D.C. office. The telecom giant Verizon has threatened to suspend benefits to 45,000 workers if they don't return to work at the end of the month. Verizon says workers and unions that initiated the mass strike will lose basic health insurance, as well as dental, vision, and prescription drug benefits if they don't comply. Verizon stopped funding the workers' pensions earlier this month when their previous contract expired. The strike was called after negotiations after Verizon sought to cut health and pension benefits and obtain more leeway to fire workers. Union representatives have described the new threat as a scare tactic. Bob Masters, spokesperson for Communication Workers of America. You can go to our interview with Bob Master online at democracynow.org. The news comes as hundreds of education advocates rallied in New York City Wednesday to oppose a $120 million contract between Verizon and New York City public schools. Patrick Sullivan is a member of the panel for education policy who voted against the contract. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.